Great question. We right now we are starting all the marketing immediately. We're going to start putting out the information. Our plan is to launch the Kickstarter and run it over the month of October. That's the current plan. There's a lot that goes into this. We've been working on it for almost a year with a marketing firm that we've hired. So we can't, as we've learned through this whole process, everything takes longer than we expected. The process of getting the license was took over a year for everything to get fully locked in. And it's a normal, we just, as people who are new to this licensing process, it was a little longer than we expected. So we thank everybody for being, but right now we feel pretty solid that we're going to be able to do a October Kickstarter. If for whatever reason it has to bump to later, we'll communicate that immediately and very quickly. So, what is the purpose of making sure the new sets are comparable with old Marvel DC OverPower? Are you not hamstringing yourself with game design balance as well as having poor representations of characters specifically? Why not a full reset? So that kind of goes with the question we just said. It is kind of a new full reset. So we have play modes. So I saw a question pop up a little lower. We're going to have 3 general play modes. Only 2 of them are really going to be played on launch. There's going to be Golden Age. This is for constructed, not limited. There'll be Golden Age, which all the sets are legal. There'll still be rules with whatever body is operating the tournament. So there'll be cards that get retired. I don't foresee us ever supporting the Devourer of World cards being in tournaments. It's a very terribly balanced, terribly designed card. So there will be things that get retired to try to keep those environments really fun and competitive. But Golden Age will all your cards will be legal with the exception of a handful of ones that get retired. That's going to have those old characters. And if you want to play the old game and mix it with the new, you can do that. And we've done some playtest games and it works. Like you can definitely pull characters in and they mix well. So that's there, but with the new environment, what we're calling modern age, that's only going to be the new stuff. So we are balancing it for that environment. Now, because of that, we're balancing everything with a mind toward the new environment. Some of it still works. Not all of it's going to work. There's going to be characters that don't see play in the old environment, but to your point, that's exactly kind of what was bad about the old environment. There was a lot of power creep and it got out of hand pretty fast. So there will be changes to Golden Age. There's certainly going to be things. Home bases, for example, that we've designed have already completely changed the meta and opened up the Golden Age environment to where when we go to the tournaments now, we see closer to 50 characters where it used to be maybe 15. So the new version is really a full reset. The third format I mentioned is Silver Age. Eventually, these sets, if we get to Top Cow 2 or 3, and we want to do another reset and kind of structure it based on, like new versions of the characters in the comics, if they've developed powers or they've changed, we'll age those old sets out and we'll have a play format called Silver Age. Silver Age will always have everything Lazarus Rising Games is released legal. So that will be the hodgepodge of everything new. So any cards you buy, including these Kickstarter cards, there's always going to be a format where they're legal. And then you'll have the newer stuff for new people that jump on. And the idea of that is creating a much lower barrier of entry for newer players as well. And just keeping things Dave, I'll kind of kick this one over to you. The answer can be no. So Captain Corum he noticed on our announcement that the formatting looks different on Teamworks and that the numbers were different. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, certainly. So we've been in the process of trying to, again, speaking to a full reset, recalibrate the way that the new game is going to work. Anyone who's a veteran of the old game knows that team defense really was the name of the game. You really needed to have at least 2 characters, your reserve character, and at least 1 front line, probably 2, that needed a 9 or less avoid, an avoid power card, a negate, those kind of mechanics.
That
And that
affected the
really,
entire team.
right, and that didn't give a lot of degrees of freedom for deck building. In terms locations we built, if anyone's familiar with Dracula's Armory, which allows you to start the game with basic universe cards, or the Spartan Training Ground, which allows you to start the game with trainings. The goal of those home bases is to allow you to bump up your power card defenses in a way that opens up the environment, and it has already done so in in uh in the environment. In terms of the new game, we have changed teamworks. In terms of the bonuses to follow up will be less, as well as the initial attack will be less, in order to allow power cards to be more useful on defense and to sort of begin to reset this more closely to where the game started with the first set and Power Surge, where power cards were still far more an active part of fence. I want to say somewhere around mission control to IQ, you really saw the power creep on team defense start to take a hold of the game where it really strangled creativity of deck building. And so, yes, so we reworked teamworks. We're reworking a number of other game facets in a way that team defense is still going to be very effective and very important, but you won't have to have three of your four characters be team defenders.
Yep, and I think that's a great explanation for it. I would say too that any of the veteran players, it becomes a pretty easy to understand math thing. If your first attack is a 6 and you have a max 6 character, they have one power card that can block the initial effect. If all of the follow-ups have an average of a 2 and a 2 or even a 2 and a 3, then if they're throwing 4s or higher, which is, all power cards, then a max 6 character can literally only block one card out of that 3-card string. And that's partially why almost no max 6 characters see play, because teamworks are such a huge part of the initial game and they're so oppressive offensively. It just doesn't allow for design latitude in both our character designing latitude and in your deck building. So that's just kind of a power level. Now, function itself, although they look different, they function exactly the same. You make the initial attack. You have to make at least one follow-up. You may make a second follow-up. They have a numerical bonus, and you can oscillate between the two power types. They don't work any differently, and you'll notice this with most of our design principles. If you sit down, once you look at it and go, I understand what they're doing here, your play of the game isn't really going to change. The power level's a little bit lower, but it's still works the same. The look have changed because we're very much trying to do things that there's been 23 years of best practices for how to make a game function. So our current one of the current things is every single card in the game now in the top left has a damage icon. So that is consistent. So when you're teaching a new player to play, they're not looking over to the top right for an ally in a teamwork, and they're looking in the top left for a power card and a special card, and they're looking like kind of in the middle down at the bottom for the number that combines with a tactic double shot. Everything is going to be in the same spot, and then at the bottom, instead of having to have the Rosetta Stone to figure out what a teamwork does, because there's not really any useful information on that for a new player. If they just pick it up and read it, it's gobbledygook. We, at the bottom of the card, actually write it out in words and then have an icon that gives you the plus. So it's just a lot more clear. We very much are of the theory to try to make sure you can read the card and know what the card does. One of the biggest things about the old game that we hear constantly are the issues with the rules, but also that if you really try to teach somebody new, every 5 seconds you're like, oh, that works differently. You just have to know that. And that is a very, very terrible way for a collectible card game to work. And it's a unbelievably huge barrier of entry for new players. So,
Yeah,
so
and
go ahead, Dave.
no, I just like to add that, we're in a mode where we're threading the needle, where we have a very important and influential existing community of fans around Overpower, but we're looking to, in the coming months and year, to be adding hundreds, if not thousands, of new players. And we need to make sure that what Joe spoke to, information is in consistent locations, and the game works intuitively and consistently, and it's easy to teach players, and there's not ongoing exceptions to how the game works and ongoing exceptions to where things are located. So we want to make sure that the game functions in a way that is indelibly Overpower and is within the brand, but is also very easy to teach new players. And we're really excited about the amount of positive buzz we've gotten from you all, the amount of new faces, and we're going to be teaching a lot of people the game, a lot of new people the game in the coming months.
Yeah. Tug, I see you said you kind of asked a question. I think we've answered most of this, but As far as the tournament scene, will Modern and Golden Age both be supported from the start? I'll go into that a little bit more because yeah, I have a consultant that we've hired that ran a store for 10 years, and he worked at GTS, which is one of the major distributors for games for brick and mortar stores. We've brought him on. He's consulting. He's helped run judge programs before and player incentive programs. So the three main focuses of him are going to be making sure that we have prize support for the stores from day one. So I think everybody knows we're printing with Cardamundi, the biggest producer in the world for trading cards and playing cards. They've only ever printed 7 games before. We're technically the 8th client, but 7th game because one of those 7 was original OverPower. So they print Magic, Lorcana, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Ronald and I had the pleasure of touring their facility in Belgium. It was amazing. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. But they'll be doing all of it, and we'll talk a little bit later about our collation model if it gets asked or people are interested. But there's very specific ways we're also going to be supporting Steel Deck and Draft Play in these from day one. And they're able to use their facilities to address that. So we're absolutely going to be doing it. Our plan right now is to create prize packs with some number of cards wrapped in Mylar that if you do a draft, none of this, don't hold us to any of this, is absolute. We're throwing these ideas around, but there will be packs that have cards that are rare versions of cards that you can get with some commons that are only available in there. So for the event sets, for example, there's going to be 3 events in the core starter set. If you go play in your stores, each of the 4 event mission sets that we have, there's going to be 2 other events that you can get in these prize packs at the common level, meaning they're not going to be hard to get. If you go play in your store a couple of times, you're going to be able to get these little prize packs, and it'll give you a little bit of a chase, but you're going to have to actually get out and play with people in person to grab them. We're working on the best way to distribute them, so it's really fun for you guys. This is something we're offering to all the stores for free. So prize support in getting brick and mortar stores to have the support to run the tournaments and build these communities. That is one of our absolute highest priorities. Genius is a fantastic series. So, Tug, you'll be happy to know that Destiny Ajayi, the main character from the Genius book, she is a playable character in the Top Cow set. And we're very much having fun trying to design her strategical abilities. And I can't give you any hints yet, but, she may be a reserve character that can, like, online, something that's going to be very akin to what her powers are in the book, her abilities. So, it's a great book. Jump out there and grab it if you haven't. Sean, so Alan is asking, are all of the artifact carriers going to be in the book? I'll let you jump in on that.
Yeah, all the carriers, I don't believe will be in the initial set. We are still trying to figure out what artifacts will be. Like I said before, Darkness, Witchblade, and Angelus will be in there. And a lot of the key artifacts will be introduced. Unfortunately, some of the Power 13, I guess, they're not really represented so comic books. So we're trying to flesh them out if they make sense, if they bring something new to the game and something that's exciting to, I guess, boost other characters. One thing we're trying to do is, for example, the Spear of Destiny would synergize very well with Magdalena, but we think it would be cool if other characters would be now the artifact carrier. For example, Stryker picks up the Spear of Destiny, and that he could get some bit of synergy. So we're trying to introduce the artifacts in a fun way that adds flavor to the characters, but we haven't locked it all down as to all the carriers in the books.
Yeah, I can definitely say all the carriers won't be main carriers, but the bigger ones will. Like now I'm completely spacing. Ian Nottingham, for example, like he's generally the carrier of the blood sword. He'll definitely be in the game. I forget the second carrier's name who had the blood sword in the now I'm spacing on the name of the artifact, but the one that lets him like get the ice armor and become really big. He's not a playable
Glacier
character.
Stone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
the Glacier Stone, the Ember Stone. the big artifacts will be in the game. The lesser artifacts, we're still ironing that stuff out.
Yeah. And so Top Cow will be the set. So we're dialing back some of the mechanics, and just like the original game did, we'll roll them out slowly as we develop. So Top Cow, if everything goes the way we think, it will be the third release set. So we'll have the Kickstarter, we'll have the first major release, which is the set Keith's working on. Top Cow would be the third set. That's where we would introduce Tactic Artifacts cards. So all right, let's jump to the next one. Ginger Ale, thank you for the heart. We love the support. What cards / mechanics that exist in Golden Age OP will not see the first few sets? Well, okay. Artifacts won't be till Top Cow. We covered that. I'll be honest, we don't have any plans to reintroduce double shots. They're a mechanic that's almost entirely not used in the game now the way it is. So we don't have any plans. I won't say that we won't, and I won't say that we won't necessarily introduce them in different forms. Events will definitely be there. Home bases will definitely be there. Battle sites will not be in the first sets, and honestly, I don't think we would introduce them again in the same way. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because we're still ironing it out. I think there will be ways to have different suites of cards, kind of akin to what the battle sites did, a group of guest stars. But I don't see us reintroducing the mechanic where you play a hero and then select between, 3 or 4 specials under another site. And then we definitely don't like from a balance standpoint, this character getting to play another character special because they're on a battle site. That's really a design nightmare, to be honest. Like, trying to balance a character while we have to consider every possible combination of every other character that can play it, it really just puts you in a hole where you can't do as many creative things. And honestly, I think it tends to create a little bit of a race to the bottom. You don't really get you're not coming out. You really want, if I'm going to play Witchblade, I want to feel like she gets to go out there and be Witchblade. So we really want to give people that feeling like they're getting to be those characters. And battle sites in their traditional form really stifle that creative process, and it just creates a lot of hurdles. So there'll definitely be something. There'll be ways to keep your guys alive, but it's not going to appear the same way. All right, Captain Corum. As a longtime huge fan of John Carter, I would like to know what the process was for making the new hero or special cards accurately thematic characters as they were presented in their original depictions. I am assuming the folks working on the card mechanics didn't happen to all be experts on Edgar Rice Burroughs' series, so did they cram reading in of all the books or consult the experts? Yeah, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. I'm about halfway through the third John Carter book. I'm a few chapters into the first Tarzan book. Other people had already read some of them, but we are consulting the Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe Company, which is the people that still write the books for his estate and have all the expertise. So we're all doing all that. Everybody kind of picked which ones they were going to read. We've all been reading them. We've been listening to the audiobooks, but also, Ronald and I at San Diego Comic-Con, we went out and had a 2-hour lunch with 3 of the people from the Edgar Rice Burroughs Company just to pick their brain on, we had a very long conversation about one of their characters, Victory Harbin, that's playable in the game. She's they have their expanded universe, which is the comics and books they still sell. And so we had a lot of conversations about okay, how does her pistol that she made work? It has all these abilities. This is what we had in the game. And then they would describe stuff, and then we would say, oh, so we could have it do X, Y, Z in the game. This is the first some of the design teams hearing about that. So be changing Victory Harbin 7 energy.
and speak on that creative process, Joe. Everybody wants this to feel authentic and true to the characters, because that's what makes the game so great. I know for the Top Cow, every game designer is fervently reading every Top Cow release just to get on what really makes.
You can see I still got them sitting right next to me. I was plowing through the Witchblade Omnibus, Cyberforce Hunter Killer.
I mean, I feel bad for my Top Cow designers because I read everything that was released from Top Cow throughout my life, having to literally just spend their nights and weekends reading everything Top Cow. It's a little much, but rest assured, we are doing due diligence to make sure the characters are accurately portrayed in the game.
And even people like me, I read at least the first 25 issues of Witchblade and Darkness. I know they've got almost 200, but even I wanted to go brush up because I have a relative idea, but I want to know if there's a change to how the Witchblade works in issue 90. We want to make sure we're able to bring that up. It's a great design process because ultimately, at the end of the day, we all always agree on everything and we never argue about it.
Yeah,
that's not true. That's not true. We argue constantly.
Oh yeah.
One of the things I would say from a design team standpoint, so there's the four of us here work as we were the original designers. So Sean, Keith, Dave, and I. We've expanded our design team. So we'll throw a little shout out there. Ty Bertrand from the Canadian group has been working on the 2 new sets, and he's one of our playtest leads. And then Steve and Greg Costa have jumped on. So we've got 7 people doing the bulk lifting on the design and the pre-play test before we get stuff out. But what's been great is we've really specifically tried to cultivate between the 4 of us and now the extended team players that we've seen that build and play the game very differently. We, as much as it can be a very frustrating design process at times, it would be easier if we all just kind of had the same view of the game. I think the one thing I'll say that we've gotten 100% positive feedback with regard to flavor for the people who are playtesting the first set, and also just that we're really trying to appeal to different types of players. I think that the people who were in charge of the game originally, they all had a singular kind of one idea of what Overpower was. And so you got a game that was you need defense, you eventually need full team defense, you always have to have a negator on your team. And it's not that you couldn't play, that is one way, but there should also be, to not to always compare it to Magic, but if you go play Magic, a blue deck plays very differently than a red deck. Red is aggro, blue is more of a control. That should be types of strategies. There should be characters that have milling that makes more of an effect, that they can mill you to your power pack faster, and that's what they're doing. So you'll kind of notice when you start to see what we put out, when we start to tease it, you'll see characters that have a little more of a thematic function. The old game would very much say, okay, Iron Man has a mill 5, but he also has an avoid, but he also has an 8 multi. Even when they were thematic on an individual card, they weren't necessarily thematic with an entire character design. A lot of times they'd come up with a new mechanic. For example, take classic Overpower. They said, we've got this idea for a JW. It's a 3, can't be defended by a special. You can follow up with a power card, can't be defended by a special. Let's just pick somebody in each power type and randomly give it to them. So they picked Heroes for Hire, White Queen, New Warriors, and Deathlock. Those don't really have a specific flavor to those 4 characters in a group of characters who are all very different. They're just a mechanic they came up with and they gave it to 4 people. That is not our design approach. Our design is we really grind it out until we get cards that we feel like create a great flavor. Not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but Dave's background is in statistical analysis. We have we sat there for I don't even know how many months. We went through every single card that's ever been put out for Overpower, and we assigned it a number between 1 and 6 for how powerful we thought it was. And then we calculated lists based on what specials characters got, if they had a grid above a 7, if they had multiple 7 grids, and we got a list of who is the most powerful characters. We had to do this a few different times and go through and adjust it till the top 20 characters on that list were the 20 we always see played in tournaments. That gave us a standard deviation of a average value of what a character is. So we use that as a base model in all of our design where we say, okay, we know a general power level for what we want our overall set to be. And if characters exceed or go below that, that influences us creating the threat value. And that's also been a big impetus for why the threat value of characters has been separated from the grid. It just gives a lot more design latitude and it lets us create a much more accurate user experience for using those specific characters. So just so you know, it's not as fun as just being like, I want I want Impact from Cyberforce to punch with an 11. You get to do that a little bit, but you have to then go do the work of the math and really figuring it out. So we really are putting a lot of work into representing these characters as accurately as we can. So you guys can do the fun part and play them. All right, so let me jump back in here. Cam, you were asking why the name changed to Lazarus Rising Games. Well, we're a new company. We've partnered with Ronald Pazzi, who's here on the panel with us. BMG was really just a placeholder because it's our last name. So Keith Bursack, David McMillan, Pan. So BMG. We really just needed to create an entity way back at the beginning of COVID when we were sitting around and Dave saw an episode of Shark Tank where these guys brought an old game back and kind of put the bug in my ear to say, like, I wonder if we could do that. We decided to form an LLC and hire a lawyer, found out that there was a path to secure all the rights and own the game. It's a much longer story, but that's the path that we got on. It was never really meant to be a long-term entity. It was just meant to see if there was a way we could possibly do this. I like to think we do a good job with the game design and we really love the community building, but we're not really business guys. We all have our strengths, but Ronald comes from a very successful career of running many very successful businesses, and he just brings a lot of things to the table that wouldn't exist without him. I can tell you right now, we wouldn't have gotten through the door at any of these licensors without Ronald. He's anything about OverPower that you guys are going to get to enjoy in the future is because Ronald came on, partnered with us, and he opened the doors for us. So this is our new entity is a company. That's why he's functioning as our president, and our new entity is a company that reflects that, Lazarus Rising Games. All right. I wonder if there won't be any new character or teammate avoid 9 or less specials. I can tell you, if there ever is that, they'll just be more expensive. That's really what it is. So, for example, I don't need to talk this whole thing. Sean, why don't you explain our design theory on team of defense?
Team defense, is if it makes sense for the character, if it's flavorful, we don't mind putting it in there. But we're not going to give an 8 ranker full team defense and make him fit on every single team. That limits team, I guess, creation. If it makes sense, if it is flavorful, then they're just going to be more expensive. So you won't have the ability to put 4 people on a team that have full team defense plus negators. They're a very powerful mechanic, so we need to make it cost more. Sorry.
And Dave, as someone who plays, what you play a lot of kind of alternative strategies. Why don't you add on to that and talk a little bit about using the home bases or other ways that we have created defense to keep characters alive?
Yes, I mean, so essentially in the legacy environment, if you are running any heroes, you need to have 2 9 or less team defenders and a negator, plus any heroes, and that was your defensive strategy. With the battle site, you might get away with 2 defensive characters plus a battle site, where one of those defensive characters might be a full negator. And that really doesn't leave you many degrees of freedom. That means you might only have one hero you're choosing that's not from a set pool of team defenders, which is disappointing. So clearly, we believe that the Dracula's Armory and the Spartan Training Ground are the beginning of an approach where there's ways to create team defense that allows you to keep your heroes alive, but doesn't take up a degree of freedom from your heroes. At the very least, we've created additional choice with home bases. When Joe and I and Keith first started coming back to the tournaments, and Sean as well, I want to say 2014, we all started to
15
filter
for
in.
us, but yeah,
Really, Team Overpower was the only home base that was being played, unless
it
you
was
were
the
playing
only.
Four Freedoms Plaza with its inherent, maybe a smattering of other things, but that was the only one. Now we're at a moment where if you do the statistical analysis of tournaments, I think Justin has done a great job with that. And maybe with some help from Ricky, you're seeing more like 5 or 6 major home bases be shifted between, so the meta moves more, and you're not seeing team defense from major heroes matter as much. For the new one, we do have heroes in the playtest that have thematic team defense that has different costs or different thresholds. So it's not that we're against that existence of team defense. Just what Sean said, it has to be thematic and fun. It has to be properly costed with the hero's threat count. And if they're doing that, if they have something as strong as a team, let's say 7 or less, 9 or less, and it's not 1 per deck, that's really what they're doing, because that alone makes them nimble. And we see the legacy environment having Scarlet Witch or Beast who have a negate with opponent discard, stars and garters, a 9, 8 multi. Those things layered on, they become auto includes, and that's not good for the environment.
At 17 points.
Yeah, 17 points. Exactly what I was going to say. Now, if it makes sense, then they're going to have to be more expensive. Like Scarlet Witch should be 20, 21 points, especially with that inherent.
Yeah, at least, yeah. And that's kind of the design principle. You'll see those cards exist in the game, but as we explained the model, we have priced those cards as more valuable, and clearly they are. That's why they're currently in every deck. But you will also see there's plenty of ways to defend your characters, and this goes back to why lowering the teamworks was so important. You know, it's not uncommon in our playtest games now that someone throws a teamwork with 2 follow-ups, and I can block it with, a 4, a 2, and a 5. And that's like definitely not the case the way the game works now. So there's a little bit less of a need for quite that much team defense as well. The general like equilibrium of attack and defense has just been adjusted by simply reducing teamworks. I mean, that made such a huge difference. So
if I could hop in for a second.
Yeah, Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, I can tell you that some of the feedback that we've gotten from the play testers has supported that, because the first week or 2 of the playtesting, people were like, hey, I can't build the kind of decks I want where I've got like 2 8 characters and a negator and then something else, because you just can't do that within the points. So it's been interesting to have those deck building strategies develop from our playtest community where they're like, okay, I have to do it a different way, so now how am I going to do it?
Yeah,
I did the same thing. I looked at it initially and thought, oh, wow, it doesn't fall into how I usually build a deck. And then once you sit down and you start making decks, you're like, oh, it performs as good and it's more fun.
And I think that's the key, is just making sure it's fun. And I do think I can tell you, this is off topic a little bit, but when we had our first get together, it was me, Sean, Dave, Greg, Steve, and we invited a person that's a part of the community that jumped in that's not on the design team. We kind of got them in on it. And sitting down and seeing the decks that everybody had built, we hadn't talked about it ahead of time. So I had seen the set, we had done the initial design, and we'd done the initial playtest with like the 4 of us. But seeing the decks other people were playing the first night, we were like, let's get together and like really play competitively. It felt like when I was 15 again, opening IQ. Like, it was like, oh my God, you built a deck with Captain Nemo, or you did something with Sheriff of Nottingham. Like, you've got John Carter and Deja Thoris on the front line doing this. It felt like I had to deduce how to play it. They felt thematic. It really was just such a fun experience. It really brought back
fun.
It brought back the childhood. I still get that a little bit from the tournaments, but not from it's very rare where I get that feeling from the deck building, Sometimes.
And part of that is also, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Keith.
A part of that is also, again, the pool of characters, where before people would look at the 20 to 30 characters and say, okay, who from there do I want to play, or who do I like the most, as opposed to looking at the entire pool and say, hey, I want to play this character, and then you make the team work.
Yeah.
Because there's not characters that are just, not playable.
Yeah. So let's jump ahead. Do you want to add? I do want to get through the rest of the questions.
Just real quickly, I think this is also the difference between having a game that was out of print for a decade plus and it not really being alive, and we kept it alive playing it, but there wasn't new cards. And now having a living card game where we're going to be doing 3 to 4 major releases, ideally a year, where the card pool doesn't ever get stale. And you have to actually do the work to both have creative game building, and that's fun. And then also you get to see new things that push your conception of what the game is in a way that's surprising, and that's the fun of it. So,
and just to be clear, I do want to say, Dave used the term "living card game." This is a collectible card game in packs or starters. It's not a living card game. It's he just means he means a game that is not dead. Okay, so let's jump to the next question. The OP Goat. I've never heard of that person, but so questions on anyone know who the OP Goat might be?
It's a weird nickname.
Yeah, that's interesting. So
move on.
Lazarus has started. Lazarus has stated that the Kickstarter should be October for the first set. Top cow and vintage characters combined. Price, Thin Burrows, when-ish. Let me make that clear because it sounds like we didn't communicate that. The first set is Edgar Rice Burroughs and the World Legends. That is a pool of characters that we got from the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe mixed with our public domain set we've tried to keep it very thematic. So you'll see it's mostly characters that you recognize that may or may not have appeared in comics in the time period of around the 1820s, like the Invisible Man and Hyde and, Mina Harker. If you recognize them maybe from a comic book. But it's characters from kind of like that mixed with the Edgar Rice Burroughs characters. And then just other characters in that vein. So Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty. Moriarty's been represented in some comic books that represent that time period, but it's mixing with the Edgar Rice Burroughs. So that is our first set for the Kickstarter. Our second set is going to be the major IP that we haven't announced yet that Keith is working on. The Kickstarter will be held in October. Fulfillment will be beginning of 2025, sometime, maybe end of first quarter, sometime in second quarter. Usually fulfillment can be up to a year later. We're really trying to push fulfillment so anyone who's running existing tournaments can incorporate the new cards and either have a mix of golden and modern age events. But we also want to immediately be building any of these stores that are buying in. We are going to have a store tier on our Kickstarter. We've got a lot of interest from stores. We want to be able to support this new season as a full thing happening around the country. So that will be the first set. There will be prize support for that set from launch. The first in-store set is, Ronald, you might want to jump in here on dates and keep me honest. I think we're aiming for on shelves for the first major release for beginning of Q3 2025. Is that? And then elaborate. And then the top cow set, which if it functions as the third set. That's the cadence we're looking at. I think when we start, I find as somebody who played a lot of Magic, 4 sets a year can be a little overwhelming. I think when we begin, we're going to target 3 playable sets a year to start with. That gives you guys a lot less money you're throwing out, and it really gives you more time to get to know the sets. If we feel like we're getting overwhelmed with too many cards and people aren't having time to really find new decks in the meta, we may skip and give you guys 6 months before we launch a new set. But it's really going to be based more on... It's going to be less of a decision based on just trying to pump out material and get money. It's going to be a decision based on how healthy is the meta in the tournament environment and really thinking from like a customer first standpoint. So we want to be like the Arizona iced tea guys of CCGs. We're really,
I love it.
We're really about making you guys get a great experience from it. So, yeah. So I think that answers all your questions, Marcel. Oh, I gave it away. I didn't know who you were. Sorry. So Mike, I think you asked when are the release dates. I think that covers your question. So, the Mighty Pencil. So Mighty Pencil is asking, he jumped in a little late. Will all cards be available through packs that will be available, or was some going to be reserved for prize support packs only? Something that I've really appreciated so far with the promos at events, they've made it to Orange King. So this is probably a good time to talk about our coalition model because it's very unique. So the first thing I'll say is there are going to be some cards that are only in the prize packs, but it's not going to be game-breaking cards. It's really going to be 2 events for each of our 4 mission sets, so 8 events. And then almost everything else that we've talked about so far would either be some of the promos you've already seen for the Any Heroes, would be included there. So Select the Slain or some of those Any Hero promos. But really, it's mostly going to just be alternative art rares that you're chasing in those prize cards. So we're going to have some of these big name artists that we're signing right now. They're going to do a version of it where you can only get the John Carter hero, like Joe Jusko we all know we announced our partnership with. So he's going to paint some original cards. Now, I would be one, but for example, if we decided that his new version of Dracula was only available in the prize pack, then you'd only be able to get it, but you can still play Dracula. You can use the common version of Dracula you get out of a pack. So this leads us into the way that we're doing our coalition. So if you remember, you open a pack of, I always like to pick on Power Surge because it was one of my favorite sets, but was horribly collated. It did not have starter decks, but they included all of the basic universes, all of the trainings, and all of the power cards. So it was not uncommon to open up a pack of Power Surge and get 2 basic universes, 2 trainings, 3 power cards, and 3 non-1 per deck specials and no heroes. That is a horrible pack opening experience if you're a kid that is buying 1 pack at a time. That's terrible. So what we are doing for our packs is we are going to have 17 card packs, and they're being offered at a competitive price point to the other games. So you're going to get more playable cards in your packs than any game that's on the market, and you're going to get it for the same price point as the other packs are. So we're definitely making sure, from a cardboard perspective, our game's going to be the best deal for you. The way we're making it not hit you so hard in the wallet is we are going to have 12 commons, 4 uncommons, and a rare slot. And what we're doing in the common slot is you are going to get 1 hero and a specific set of 5 specials. And that's going to be a locked set of 6 cards. Hero, 5 specials. You'll get a second hero and 5 specials. Now, our printing partner can randomize that. So you're never going to be able to map out which 2 are in the same pack. You might get Victory Harbin and Tarzan. You might get Tarzan and Dracula. You might get Dracula and Invisible Man. That's going to be random. That allows us to do draft play, which I'll go into later, but it also allows us, then we have the 4 uncommon slots. Those slots are going to include the 6th special, because most characters have 6 specials, so they're really good 1 per deck will be an uncommon. A little bit of a chase, but not much. As we all know from collecting games, it's pretty easy to get uncommons if you buy a box or 2. So there is 41 characters in the set. Those 1 per decks will be in those 4 uncommon slots, along with some specialty power cards, some teamwork cards, and some home bases, and some of the any heroes. That's going to allow you to do draft, and when you open a pack, you'll kind of have a selection of cards that you know that you're building from. I'll talk about draft later. But what that does is everything in the rare slot that's left is going to be alternative art or foil alternative art. So the only big chase you're going to do is if you really want to get that Mark Sylvain, original variation of Witchblade in Darkness that only exists in this game, that's going to be your rare card. You can still get the common version and play the game. And what that does is it's really going to give you guys as the player, if you're not about the chase, if you just like the game, you're not going to have to dig to try to find the Devourer of Worlds that's won every case. That's miserable. Like, no one wants that experience. It's why CCG started to die off a little. You're going to be able to go out and buy 2 or 3 boxes and have a player set of every character. But if you want that real badass, like Mark Silvestri version of the Cyberforce characters, then there's going to be a chase. And the other thing that does is the stores really need a secondary singles market. Their margins aren't enough on selling the game. So we have to consider that. This model makes it so that the collectors are going to have those valuable singles that the stores can then sell afterwards. And people are going to want to get that. People are already paying $30 just for the different variation of Dracula that we put out, that we didn't expect these to have any aftermarket value. So, that's going to allow people to still have the chase, to still collect, to get really cool different versions of heroes, or maybe some 1 per decks or home bases, whatever we decide to use the art for. But if you're a kid like Dave and I were, who's digging through your couch cushions for change to try to go buy a pack, you're going to be able to go buy that and get 2 characters that you can immediately sit down and put into a deck, and you get to play and have fun with that 1 pack you bought. So that's kind of a little bit on how we're going to construct these decks. All right, so we'll jump into the next one. Sounds great. Will there be other play classes like Magic has Modern Standard? So we did cover that a little bit. Yeah, there's going to be, I'll say it just quickly because we went over it. Modern is whatever's currently legal. Golden Age is going to be all the cards together, so legacy cards and new cards. And eventually Silver Age will include all the Lazarus sets that have ever been put out. Eventually some will age out of Modern, but we always want cards you purchase from a place they can be played. How long does it take to come to a consensus during game development? Keith, you haven't. Why don't you jump in there? How long does it usually take us to come to a consensus?
Have we gotten one yet?
Yeah, there's some things which we just don't come to a consensus on, and it just moves forward. But no, it can take a while, which is good. I mean, I think that's part of what is going to make the sets that we're putting out so great is that we all come at it from different angles, different perspectives, different backgrounds, different deck construction styles, and then bringing all that to the table is I think part of what makes it great. Because then, believe me, there are some significant heated discussions, headbutting that go on during this process. It is not a ton of hand-holding and kumbaya.
And one thing that I think is great about it, though, I've sort of said from the beginning, it's our strength. The iron sharpens iron. Dave and I both had a conversation a few weeks ago talking about this phenomenon where I'll put Dave on the spot. He designed Professor Moriarty, who I think we've said is going to be in the set. He's one of the. Dave had a very specific design in mind. There was one tweak that was made to it, but I, in general, didn't care for it. And, we went through the debate. I was sort of outvoted on how it would work. It was not how I was going to design it. I didn't think anyone was going to want to play it. And then we came to a consensus. We are good about once we decide in general, like we move on and we go to testing and we let the testing decide. I used him in testing. I built some decks. I wanted to see what I thought. Out of 41 characters, he might be my favorite character in the set. And so that's another thing that's good to recognize too, is I do think while we'll fight that fight right up until we vote and it goes to testing, I think we're all very good about playing the characters after or doing the test and having very honest opinions about it, saying like, I was wrong, this really works, it's super fun, I like this mechanic. And I think that's a big part. If we were kind of giving advice on a general, not to do with OverPower, I think the biggest thing is understanding that like, even if you like believe with all your heart that one thing should be one way, it doesn't mean it's the only way. And it also doesn't mean that like other people aren't going to love it. There's maybe player X, one of our playtest teams, there was a character included in the set that I didn't really want to have in the set. I didn't love the idea of it, but we kind of moved on with it because some of the other design team did. And then the first feedback I got from one of the playtest groups was like, oh, this is so awesome. I can see this being used in Top Cow in the later sets. So I'd say that's a part of the process is we do go through that grind. We can tell you, we've been designing the first 3 sets for, almost a year and a half now. In the Edgar Rice Burroughs set specifically, we got to be coming up on 2 years, I think, of design we've been doing for that set, design and playtesting. So it's not a short process. It's not we take a lot of time and put a lot of thought into what we're putting out there for you guys. Yeah. So Window Trees, thanks for the question. All right, so Captain Corum, he just remembered the most important question. The copyright stamp on BMG cards says OverPower with a lowercase p, which is blasphemy. He's highly offended. I think that's fair. Will this be corrected on Lazarus Rising cards with the copyright stamp with a capital? Yes, absolutely. That, to be honest, is just a symptom of me having very bad ADD. So while there's things I'm really good at creatively, I probably gave our graphic designer that and just forgot to capitalize the P. So that's on me. Luckily, we have a bigger team and a lot more people that have expanded that are checking the work, and what you're going to get when you buy the product is a much more consistent product. And that is officially OverPower has a capital P. So yes, that was a fun question. The GOAT is back. Looking forward to trying the new game. Give us one spoiler. Headless Horseman 1 per deck. You're asking for one of the 1 per decks on the Headless Horseman? Keith, you got your binder here? I'm trying to remember.
It's right next to me. Let me pull it up.
Well, actually, Sean, you designed him. Is Mark of the Headless the only 1 per deck?
Yes.
I feel like it is.
So, Sean, why don't you, instead of that, Keith, Sean.
Yeah, it's fine.
This is fun. Headless Horseman has a very good flavor. So, Sean, why don't you describe how Mark of the Headless works and how the character design overall works?
And I do have it here if you need me to read it or something for you, Sean, since you might not have it with you.
Mark of the Headless is his only 1 per deck, and what it does is it kind of curses the person that you put it on. And once that person is cursed with the 1 per deck, all of his other non-1 per deck specials get a little bonus. So his non-1 per decks do have flavor and feel, so they can, of course, go towards anybody, but characters afflicted with the mark of the headless. He is kind of like the Terminator. He will not stop, and all of his extra effects.
Yeah, so once that hits, he's very powerful. Like, I know one of the secondary effects, it's an attack. If he's got the mark, it can be made post-concession. One of them is something that will force them to discard all their cards placed to them, all the marks on them. So without giving away every single card, Marcel, if that answers your question, he's sort of designed like he is. He gets someone's controlling him, someone says, that's your target, go kill him, and everything he does is better if he's focused on that one person. He might still deal with Ichabod Crane, who's messing with him over here, but he is a singular target character for better or for worse. So,
and just to allay everybody's concerns, no, Ichabod Crane is not a character in the set.
He is not a character in the set.
I fought for him. I was outvoted.
I told you, Sean, no 10-point characters.
Oh, so Night Stalker, we got a little bit of a fight going in the text now. Night Stalker is saying they usually called it Overpower without a P. I believe we are going to be doing the capital P on everything, mostly because when you see the logo, our new logo, and the old logos, that's how they did it. So to keep it uniform, that's where we're going to go. We'll jump over the other comments going back and forth on that point. Either way, it's Overpower, guys. We all love it. It's going to be great. So Night Stalker, Tug. With distribution planned, how many boxes will be needed to complete the base set of cards? It's still a CCG. There's still randomness, but I can tell you with the percentage of the drop rates, if you're just trying to get one of each card, I feel like you're almost always going to get that with 2 boxes. Not counting the rare cards. Just if you're talking about a playable version of every card, common and uncommon, you should probably get that with 2 boxes, and you'll probably have most of the characters will have a play set of specials at that point. If you're trying to make sure you have at least 3 playable copies of every card and you're just buying the packs, it would probably take closer to 3 boxes to get player sets. Now, we didn't talk about this, but one thing I do want to say, so we are not putting foundational cards in the packs. So we are going to have 4 set starter decks. They're going to be focused on one of each of the 4 power types: energy, combat, brute force, intelligence. That is going to be where your power cards are coming from mostly. So we are also going to be selling a power card brick, the same way Magic does land bricks. If you're a little newer to the game, this is going to be one of the things that we add pretty commonly into the higher tiers on the Kickstarter. That's going to come with at least... I'm trying to remember. I think the magic number based on the printing was like 216 cards. So that'll be split up between each of the 8 cards for each power type. But your training cards, your basic universe cards, your ally cards, those are only going to appear in the starter decks. And mostly because it's a little bit annoying at first if you want the new versions of them that you have to buy starter decks. But at the same token, it's way when you want to draft a game and you don't have to have slots taken up by cards that no one really wants or cares about to open in a pack. So it goes back to creating that great experience for the packs and how you'll be able to use them in a fun draftable format. So I hope that answers that question. After the Nora, so go through here. Marcel, Sean wants his Dracula back. I'm not sure what that means. Okay. I'm just trying to plow through here. All right, so I'm going to stop at about the questions that started coming in at 10. I did get some questions submitted ahead of time, so I do want to try to get through at least a few of these. I know it's getting late, guys. So I'm going to plow through a few of these quickly. So will there be a new spot on the cards dedicated to citing the artist of the card? Other games do that. Yes, that's something we just, learn as we go. We didn't really think of that when we put out the promos. It was all one artist, Guy Gonzalo, that we work with. But yes, we are absolutely including The name of the artist and set numbers will be at the bottom of the card in small print for every card, just like other games do. And we want to, because these artists, they're doing such amazing work and they're working so hard. They're so fun to work with. They've been such great guys. We really want to make sure they're all getting their comeuppance. Can someone sign up for the player incentives program? We don't have that set up yet. But if those of you who don't know, a lot of games will do teach the game programs. So what we'll do is we are going to have some amount of alternative art cards that only exist if you're an ambassador of the game, meaning there'll be a way to sign up. You'll go to your local store and you'll be like, hey, I want to get an OverPower community going, or there is one, I want more people. You sign up for the player incentive program. You go in, you teach X amount of people, and you're given either packs or singles that are going to be cards that you can only get by being an ambassador to the game. So there's absolutely a player incentive program that's going to exist for going and teaching the game and bringing new players in, and hopefully getting some cool art cards that you can either sell to the secondary market or use them if you like them. That'll be a big incentive to start to build up some great ambassadors for the game. We already kind of went through this one. Someone asked the same question about which mechanics. Oh, this was a great one. So the new Witchblade seems to be the same card with art from the original image set. Can we expect to see new cards for characters like Sarah and Jackie, or just updated art of the original cards? So the actual art that we showed is from the new Witchblade comic that just got released. So those of you who don't know, for Top Cows never reset their universe. So if you were picking up random Witchblade crossovers where she would appear, she was 45 years old now. So Witchblade and Darkness, Top Cow's doing their first actual reboot they've ever done. So Sarah Pazzini, when she started the comics, was 20 years old. So she is back to a 20-year-old new detective, and the art that we used in that release was from the new Witchblade #1. So for the art, we're definitely going to have original art, but we're gonna focus a little bit more toward the new stuff. Just because it's really cool, and that's getting we're just working with Top Cow, so we want to be a good partner and use some of this great new art that artists like Scott J. Campbell has done and Mark Silvestri is doing. So the stats might be the same. Witchblade stats on that card were just because she's pretty, that we think that was pretty accurate. That's pretty close to what we're going to use. But other characters where we thought the stats didn't match up, we're going to create what we think are the most accurate stats. What is the biggest challenge you've faced in resurrecting and modernizing this wonderful game? I think it's a good one for Keith and Dave. Keith, why don't you say, what do you think the biggest challenge we've had is for taking a game that already existed, bringing it back, and modernizing it?
I think the biggest challenge was something that David mentioned earlier, is that there's so many unique niche rules that don't make sense that you just have to learn. And then just trying to have the rules be streamlined and cover that so that you don't need to have somebody explain to you how something works or read a giant rule book. We wanted the cards to stand on their own a lot more to a degree. We've come up with I think a very good order operations that clears things up. So, when there's conflicts, you just look at that to say, okay, what would normally take priority over something else? Unless a specific card calls out a specific other card or type of card, just to make it flow a lot easier, and for people sitting around their table playing, or around a game store table, to be able to figure it out, not just okay, it could be either one. There'll be real answers that you can figure and be a total expert.
And that's a big thing for us, is rules working instead of random rulings for a random 2-letter code system that no game has ever used before. So we will not have 2 codes. We're going to have a rule book that functions. So Keith's talking about specific exceptions. So an example for you older players, if I play a home base Onslaught Citadel and I use the characters from it, the inherent reads, I can only draw 7 cards per hand. But if I use Onslaught to play onto X-Man, the Pym particles, am I then allowed to say that I can draw 10 cards? What takes precedent? The answer is the game literally doesn't tell you. We're just left to try to figure it out, because no one ever did that in the original game. The new rule book has a order of operation that would say, if they don't call it out, this card takes precedent over that card. If it specifically calls it out and says, like, this card may not be negated, well, it's calling out an exception, so it functions the way that the card will read. So, Dave, what do you think? What's been the biggest challenge of resurrecting the game?
I would say that there's so much passion around the game when it's been out of print for as long as Overpower was, but you have people still playing it, collecting it, creating customs. Everybody has felt in a positive way a little bit of ownership over Overpower and what it is, what it was be. And that's a really strong base of energy to work from, but it's also challenging to manage it. And I think we at points have check swinged on making larger announcements or larger changes to the rules or talking about our vision for the game until we could announce this licensing because it was very important for us for you all to view us as legitimate and to be good stewards of the game and like Hair Club for Men, I'm not only the president, but I'm also a client. For you all to get to know us, know that we have what's, our hearts in the right place, and then to know that we're also willing to put our money where our mouth is, which is why Ronald being team president and our changing to Lazarus Rising Games was so important because it's like a transformation. So I think it's just been really getting the trust of the community, harnessing that energy, um, working with some folks. We've had some, big support largely. We've had some valid criticism, and we've tried to take that criticism and make the new entity the best it can be. And obviously, Ronald's leading us to great places with these 3 licenses, and I can't wait to announce the third. It's going to blow your mind. So I think it's just been working with the community and working with each other and continuing to love the game.
And now I will address I kind of felt the same way with Dave. I have a really hard I do great obviously with the positive. I really take to heart when there's negative opinions of what we're doing because I genuinely feel like this is the best group of guys you could be doing something like this with. We're so close outside of the game. Obviously Sean and I met playing Overpower when we were kids because I ripped him off on a big trade. He had a Thor hero, and I was like, I'll give you all these X-Men cards. This is just one card. But that's how we met, and we still laugh about it. We became really good friends because of Overpower, and we just bring that, like I wouldn't know a lot of the people I have without this game. I wouldn't have met Dave or Keith, and so playing the game, but also just the community and the friendships that have been formed with the Bertrands, getting to go to their house. I couldn't even list them all, but the Keffers have been great. There's so many great people we've met through this, and I want to bring the game back, but I also want people to be making these lifelong friendships. So the tough part for us is when a small thing happens or there's a way we have to do something to be able to do what we want to do, which is bring this experience. And there's just like, it's hard for us to be able to communicate that, like that we are working in good faith to try to do what we care about our players more than anything else. So, one specific thing I'll address directly is I know we've gotten a lot of flack for having to, on some level, police the customs community. And that's been one where I felt like we've gotten people that have been very unfair to the situation we're at. But now that we've announced the license, we can tell you when we had the very first sit down with Top Cow Comics, they have teams of people that research the game. And the first thing they did is they went out and they just said, there's a lot of bootlegs of this game out there, and we're very reluctant to get into something that's being bootlegged so much. This is not something other people deal with because they're making a new game. We were bringing back an old game. And so I can tell you for a fact that we would not be doing Top Cow if we wouldn't have put a stop to some of that. And that doesn't mean we don't like customs. I was the first guy making the customs. I gave one of the guys who's made a lot of them, Dan Diaz, I gave him his first Photoshop template to do it with. So we don't have an issue with that. We want people to create art. We want people to be able to celebrate like their love for the game and their love for the characters. There's just a certain amount of stuff that these companies have said. If the goal for all of us, I believe it is to get this game back on shelves and be able to buy it and have our favorite characters back in it again, there's just a reality of what we were told we had to do. And that's also, we haven't announced the big ones yet, but I can tell you literally in 2 of the other meetings with big IP holders, the things that have existed that look like they're being created by a lot of other creators, they were directly brought up as a thing we needed to deal with. So there's definitely a way we can coexist with the customs community, and we love the enthusiasm. So we're not opposed to any of that, and we don't want to be the boogeyman there. We love, I don't know if Al is still on here. One of our play testers, he posted a bunch of Annihilation comic themed characters from the Birth of the Guardians of the Galaxies era. I loved them. The art was fantastic. They're very creative. So we love that stuff. There's just some realities of what we have to deal with at the same time. So that's probably what I would say. I do want to. No. So I think we all have the same goal, and I think we're gonna get there. So, all right. So, Sean, I do want to move on to the other questions. I don't want to give you a short time, but biggest challenge, biggest hurdle so far for getting to where we've gotten. No, we might be. Sean has a very young baby, so we may be in dealing with baby mode for a second. All right, Sean, you forfeit your answer to that question. Let's jump to another one. So, I'm gonna read through and see if there's any particularly big ones. Biggest challenge. I think we've discussed most of the mechanical changes. We talked about battle sites. Somebody asked this. This is a quick answer. We are in the big glossy square cut mission cards. They're going to be like the image set was. So they'll be on regular card stock, cut the same as your regular cards. That's just with the amount of stuff that we're doing, that's a reality that we're facing with that. So I promise you they're going to have original art that's going to blow you away. So you're not going to notice that they're not on the glossy one. Now we have talked about, as maybe a chase thing for prize support at big tournaments, we might produce glossy versions because it's easier to do that as a separate print run. We may be doing that. That's something we've thrown around as possible prize support for getting the really cool glossy versions. It's not the way that we're doing the packs. It's not really practical, or the starter decks, I mean. I think we talked a lot about why the threat cost is separated. So I think we answered that question. Okay, this is a quick one. I don't want any explanation. I just want a choice. If you have to live in a world without pizza or Chinese food, what is it? I'm going to live without pizza. Keith?
I'm living without pizza.
Sean?
It's real difficult. I'm living in China right now. I eat Chinese food every day, and I am literally dreaming of pizza. So I would say no more Chinese food.
Dave? No pizza, no Chinese food, Dave. What are you going to live with? Well, you don't get either. Ronald? No pizza, no Chinese food.
He's Italian.
Oh.
I'm back.
Dave, you have to live in a world without Chinese food or without pizza. Go.
I'm going to let my flag fly. I don't really like pizza. I said it.
I'm not a big pizza guy. Okay.
All
right, that's it. I mean, you don't get you don't get an explanation. We said you just get to answer. And now it's out there and you have to live with it. When the Kickstarter's launched, so this is a good question. And to be honest, we haven't decided this yet. The question is, how much information are we going to put out there about what's in the set before the Kickstarter? We got to hammer that around. I can tell you my gut is more is better, but if there's a good argument to be made that people might want some surprises, completely decided. We've been piecemealing it out a little bit, but we wanted to get to the point where we had the big announcement, and now we'll probably let our flag fly a little bit and get a little more into telling you mechanics or giving out art or telling you character lists. So
can I give an opinion?
Yeah, what do you think, Dave?
I think, it's again, we're threading a needle, and I think you want to combine both. If you look at that first release almost 2 years ago of the power cards with the Orange King, we let you know pretty much everything that was in the pack, but we did have a few surprises. And that's where I would like us to land, where you know what you're going to get, but also you don't know what you're going to get. Meaning, like, you're guaranteed 3 to the power cards, the 5 multis, a 6 any, but also you didn't know you're going to get a Dracula Hero promo, and you didn't know 1 or 2 other surprises. And so, again, one thing that's cool is that, again, we're not a monolith. We're 5 very different personalities with 5 different backgrounds. And we also bring in new designers with Ty and Greg and Steve. So I'm sure we'll debate it. But I like the idea of like when you buy something, you know exactly what you're gonna get, except there might be an extra little surprise, like a baker's dozen type situation.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me too. I think that like if you're really into the competitive scene, I know Magic and like the games that have big tournament scenes will just drop the whole thing so pros can study it ahead of time. We may get to that point. We may not. I don't know. Like we're definitely our own company doing things our own way. We do look at what all the big boys like Lorcana and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh do, but Overpower is a very unique game. That's why we love it. It's not resource management. It's not, all those other games have a relatively similar structure of summoning small things or paying for a spell. So we're always gonna be doing Overpower's Overpower. We're gonna do Overpower its own way. So we can't fully answer that, but I'd say Dave made a pretty convincing argument to like give you guys enough so you're super excited, but we want that pack opening experience where you see something and you go, oh my god, that's amazing. Whether it's an awesome piece of art or it's something you didn't know was going to be in there. Yeah. Yeah. Are we wanting to cut it off? I don't know what other people. I'm ready to. I'll keep going if people got more questions. So we don't have this nailed down yet. We have not answered the question. I can tell you what I think is going to happen, and I've kind of softly floated this out there. Obviously, the people who work for the company can't be competing in regular tournaments. I think that we have right now an insular enough community that nobody would mind. But when we get to the point where we're having, 15, 20,000 players nationwide that are playing in like various levels of super competitive tournaments, you just can't do that. That's the optics of it. What I've kind of envisioned is we have a tournament circuit that we've built now, either keeping the remnants of that or rebuilding it in some way and having the owner's circuit. What I'd like to see is us still being able to get together and play exactly the where we're playing, where we have a circuit where there's like 5 to 6 events a year that we play in and we keep the stats. The players that don't work for us are going to play in the regular tournaments and nationals as well. But we toyed with the idea of people who win national events or do really well for the season earning invitations to come play in the owners league and to come play kind of in like the club of the old players that have been playing forever, where we grandfather in anyone that's been played in tournaments before, and then inviting them to, inviting new players in. So if that's a push to get anybody to travel out, there's only Seattle, Ohio, and Boston for this season. And if we end up doing something like that and you want to be grandfathered in, make an effort to get out to one of these 3 events so you're on that list of people who played in the past. All right. Ronald, was there any other questions you had that you wanted me? I've got a few more here I was going to read through, but I'm fine. And to add to that too, we have about, I think we're up to what, Keith, 9 or 10 playtest teams across the country that we're doing.
Yes.
A lot of those are players that played before. So there is definitely a value to us too. If there's, if you're a player that collected the cards, but is like interested in playing, but has never really played, there's a value to us to getting you and some of your friends together and doing maybe a one-off where we supply you with the Learn to Play rule book, you read it, and then there's some mechanism for us monitoring like your first play session. You guys build a deck, some way to do something like that. So if that is you, if you're somebody who's kind of new and hasn't played before and maybe wants to do something like that, I can't promise that we'll get to everybody that writes, but that's something where you could potentially be involved in a little bit of an earlier process and at least a one-off play test to help us test the rule book for new players. So I've only got, out of this big list of questions, I just went through it. I think we've done everything. So there was 2 quick ones I'll just throw out there. So one guy just asked about the digital platform. I'm assuming that's Gustav. I addressed that online today, but so what I said is for our initial launch, developing a full digital platform, that's a huge undertaking. Snap was I think 4 or 5 year endeavor. They had what was it, Sean? $50 million investment to develop Snap.
Yeah, it was $35 million. Yeah,
$35 million went in to get that. So It's a very, very big, huge commitment on the front end. And not that we wouldn't have been able to maybe do that, but we wanted to get you a set sooner. And our focus is we don't want to take away focus from in-person play. You know, the root of this game is getting together with people in person. We all went through a pandemic. We really want to push people coming together in person and forming these communities. And we don't want to take away from that yet. Now, our intention is absolutely, I don't think there's anybody here that wouldn't like to just sit on their couch at the end of a work day and jump on and have a ladder system and try to like get to platinum, diamond, whatever it is at the top of an OverPower ladder in a digital platform. Like, we all want to do that. I won't say that I see that as something happening within the first couple of years. So it's something we definitely want to get to. We've talked about just ways to just have digital collections to display the art, the ways to do an actual play client. It won't be something that we launch with. It'll be something a little further down the road. And then there was one other one. Someone just asked if with the play testing, if we encountered any big snags or any big balance issues. And I think the thing to say is, not to pat ourselves on the back, but no. There's definitely great feedback we've got. We were if you guys came in and heard us heatedly debating right when you guys were starting to, we were just having a hour-long meeting about one tweak to one character that's had a few suggestions made. So there's definitely always going to be feedback, and there's going to be different people who have different opinions on different things. There's already changes that we've made, but I'd say overall, for the most part, we have gotten 100% unanimous feedback on the flavor of the characters, feeling extremely flavorful. If we've kept the different playtest groups separated from each other, so we specifically said don't talk to the other groups about what you're building or what you're giving us for feedback, because we want to make sure all these different groups, we want to see where they gravitate toward naturally playing within their groups. And then when we move the playtest onto the next stage, we're going to hold some kind of like more competitive playtest events where we're either going to put up a cash prize or something that gets people to really try to build as competitively as they can with what they've learned in their playtest. All of these different things that we're going to do before the fulfillment happens in 2025 is going to influence any last minute tweaks or design changes we make. But the good news to report is we did our job really well so far from what we're hearing. Like, there's really, I think out of 41 characters, there's only 2 that I've noticed that haven't really seen play. And that's, I think, a pretty good percentage of a set that big. So, I'm going to plow through now. So that's everything I had on the side. Let me see if I see any. Cam, you asked about going to the OP Cup. I'm definitely going. I believe Dave's going. Sean, I don't think will be back from China yet. Ronald is our business guy. He actually doesn't play the game yet, but I'm working on him. And then Keith, you'll be in Ohio also, right?
No, I can't make Ohio.
Can't make it.
No,
so
yeah.
Dave and I will both make it, but guys, we've been breaking the record for a number of tournaments in a row now, and we're trying to keep breaking it. So what's Ohio at? Did it hit 40? I think we're at 40. So come on out, guys. It's a great time. We have so much fun. I mean, really, like, we would not be doing this if the going and seeing all these people in person at these tournaments wasn't such a fun experience. We just really it's fun doing the prep work. It's fun competing. It's fun, like, seeing the different people's decks. It's just really a great experience. Win or lose, it's a great experience. So Cam, I hope that answers your question. I hope we see you out there. Yes, Moriarty is a Star Trek Next Generation character. I was so happy they got the actor back for Picard in that one scene where they go to the station with the holograms. It's a little spoiler. It's midway through, but yeah, fan favorite. I love all the Moriarty episodes of Next Generation. Did Top Cow give you a demographic breakdown on who buys Witchblade Darkness comics? What is the target entry age for new customers? We didn't get that information from Top Cow, but we do have a marketing firm that we've hired that's doing all kinds of market research for us, like any company does. So we've got ideas about all this stuff, but we didn't get it directly from Top Cow. So to dredge up a question from the first live stream, 2022, we get Zoro as a character, right? I'm going to spill the beans because I'm terrible at keeping secrets. Absolutely. Zoro's in the set. I think from those original power cards, there was one, the brute force one was Beowulf and Grendel. They're the only characters that don't appear as playable characters from those original power cards, if that gives you some hints on who's going to be in the set. And they do appear throughout the set, though. We're really trying to build our own World Legends universe, so you will see some of those characters on teamwork cards and allies and things. But neither one of those ended up being playable characters. Any chances of seeing cards from Transformers, G.I. Joe, Ninja Turtles, Airborne, She, Danger Girl, Evil Dead? I mean, look, who doesn't like all of those properties? Like, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with this because this is the fun part. We all talk about who would be the best to see. Who in their right mind does not want to play all 4 Ninja Turtles on an OverPower team? Like, there's 4 of them. There's 4 slots. Like, yeah, absolutely. Is there any specific plans right now? There's just sort of a list of all the properties that we would really like to get to. So we definitely aren't ever ruling anything out. I would say that our main goal for what comes after these Image comic sets that we're setting up is going to be to try to get back to exactly what OverPower was originally. And as Ronald let out, there's been conversations. We can't say anything else, but we have every intention of making OverPower exactly what it was and then continuing on to other IPs. I can personally tell you, I would love to see Capcom. I would love to see the Street Fighter characters because Sean and I grew up on Capcom versus Marvel, but I would love to see a Capcom set with Street Fighter, Mega Man, Resident Evil characters, Darkstalkers, Devil May Cry, like any of those properties. Yeah, so that's that. Great to see you all. When can we expect to see an official rulebook and playing guide? John, we covered that a little bit. So we do have the big rulebook with the playtest groups. That's the one that'll live online and contain all of the rules. That's what we didn't talk about this, but our consultant is creating a judge test. So people that want to be official judges, they will have to read the big rule book, and there'll be levels. There'll be certain levels of tests depending on what level of event they want to judge. And then there'll be the learn to play rule book. The learn to play rule book will probably be put out to the community before the big rule book. We're working on that right now. I'm working with someone on it. I'm hoping within a week or two, we get a draft that I can send to these guys on the stage with me, but it's hard to say when we'll have that out to the players. I definitely think our intention is to try to play next season under the new rules. So that's something we're going to be pushing a little harder once the Kickstarter wraps. What are your plans for the national tournaments? Oh, we kind of covered that. Thanks, Ronald. Will we get reprints of the level 8 foil promos? Alan Spader asked that. No. We were very clear that the foil versions of those level 8s were the first love letter, the very first thing for coming back. We always want to be offering more things. We want everybody to have a chance to get them when they're out. But just for the sake of the people who went out there and bought the very first ones, we want them to maintain the value that they have. So we'll always create non-foil versions of stuff so everyone can at least get the art. But we are going to sometimes have stuff that's only available if you're willing to go do that chase. So keep that in mind with things like our player incentive program, our judge program, and going to play in person at your stores is the one I want to push the most. There's going to be foil versions and alternate art versions you only get from those places. And you're going to have to go get them. Other than that, there'll be secondary market purchases. So that's kind of the substitute. That's what you have to pay for having us put all the playable cards at common and uncommon to make it cheaper to get the set. Oh yeah, and does Lazarus plan on doing the big cons? Absolutely. As soon as we have product in hand, the first thing we'll probably push out will be starters that we can hand out. We absolutely will start having a presence at all the cons. So thank you, Captain Corum, for understanding that. Unfortunately, there's some crackdown that had to happen. Who's everyone's favorite character coming in the first set? I already said mine. I definitely am a pretty big fan of Moriarty. But what do other people think? Dave, who's your favorite character so far?
I've met with Wicked Witch of the West, and I don't want to give spoilers on how she works. When we first, wasn't my design, it was Keith's design. When I first saw it, I didn't understand it. And then I was doing another design that I want to talk about. That I backed into like, oh, I see what she's doing now because it leverages this. And then the rest of the team coalesced around that. So it's just, he's probably my favorite current build, particularly mechanically.
Sean?
Well, I don't want to be narcissistic, but I did design Sun Wukong, and he's so fun to play. He's expensive, and he feels tricky, but once you get how to play him, he's really fun.
Yeah, and that's another good example. So he is one of our 23-point characters. If you know Sun Wukong from the old mythology, he's kind of the Goku is based on him in Dragon Ball. He's like insanely powerful. He has some abilities even more than what Goku has that we've tried to represent. So he's a 23-pointer. He was weak for his cost, but Sean whooped up on me quite a few games in a row with him, and I grew to respect him as an opponent. So, and then Keith, what do you think? Who's your favorite character so far that we've designed?
I would say again, slightly narcissistic, like Sean. I mean, growing up, the group I played Dungeons and Dragons with for like over a decade, the big baddie in there was Cthulhu. So I was really happy, and I'm really happy with how the Cthulhu was turned out. I think in the set that so he's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I think Cthulhu's very thematic. I really like there's mechanics where like characters have to discard cards or things that are representing the sacrificing to get him to do things. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit. We may or may not. I kind of wanted to explain the lore of the set, which I don't think we've put out there, but this will be fun. So, no promises on this, but there is talk that we might have a 20-page physical comic book or digital comic book, depending how it goes. But we're talking about creating a comic book to kind of explain why are all these random characters together. And the rough plot line that we've come out with is this will give you a little insight on some new characters. So, the Time Traveler, who's the character in the H.G. Wells novel, the Time Machine, isn't ever named. He's just the Time Traveler. He's a playable character in the set. He has some very unique mechanics. He'll be the first character that you see that has a card that can negate an event card that's played. Event cards are something in the game that there isn't really a way to deal with, and we thought, who better to deal with those than the Time Traveler? The lore of the set is, without getting too far down the rabbit hole, the Greek gods start to return, and he thinks it's because he's been messing with time. And so he has to go around and kind of gather all these different heroes from Mars, from the jungles where Tarzan's from the past, and he has to gather them to kind of deal with gods. So you'll notice why we have like Zeus in the set. I think we gave away, someone mentioned we have Hercules in the set. There's a little bit of that theme of those gods and a theme of a lot of the older kind of Victorian heroes. And that's the general lore. And where Cthulhu ties in is we've sort of tweaked it where the gods originally had the war with the Titans, and then they defeated and banished most of the Titans. Cthulhu, the great old one, is one of the Titans from Greek mythology. And that's how he ties in, as like kind of the big villain of the set. So there's a little bit of fun lore that goes into the set. So yeah. So we've got a lot more stuff that's being listed here. Mortal Kombat, Resident Evil, Street Fighter, mentioned that. Yeah, of course. Like, if it makes sense with the 4 power grids and there's an audience for it, like, look, we want to do it all eventually. I'd love to have Samus on a team with Wolverine, like these crossovers happen in the comics for a reason. So all right, kind of flowing through this still. Let's see if there's any more. What's the art on my wall? Actually, you can't really see it, but if you guys know Larry Elmore, who did the original red box of Dungeons and Dragons, he did the covers for my favorite book set when I was a kid, Dragonlance. It was kind of the first Dungeons and Dragons books that TSR ever put out. And so I got these as a gift when I was in my 20s, and it's he only did 1,500 of these special prints, and then he signed them all. And I had them in a hard tube from when I was about 21 until a year ago, and I could never afford to get them framed. And so finally, they don't sell these covers anymore. I got each one of them. It's the first book, second book, third book. I got a suede leather matting for in each of the colors of the original book, so red, blue, and green. So it's one of my favorite things I have up on my wall. I really like them. So Yeah, after I kept them around, was finally able to get them framed. So great question, Captain. Thank you.
I think that was aimed at Keith.
Oh,
I
You
didn't
do
want to
love
stop
Pop-
Joe because he was on a roll, but yes.
hey Keith, what's the art that you have on your wall that comic book people care about?
No, as I explained in the thing, it's from Squadron Supreme, the miniseries that came out in 1986, the final issue, number 12. The big fight with between the Squadron Supreme and the people who didn't want them to turn the United States into a quasi-fascist state.
That is awesome. I really I didn't learn about the Squadron Supreme till they did the crossover with the Ultimate Marvel Universe, but it was a really good book. I kind of got into them after that for a little while. So, oh, Al, I think we covered this. Yeah, we've got some people lined up who've never played before that are going to do some one-off play tests for sure. Will all the new location cards be lacking specific lists of characters like BMG ones, or will they have list of characters? The answer to that, Captain, is right now they're going to be like the ones we've released. What we've done, actually, you'll start to see on the newer ones. This was actually a comment from one of our playtesters. Instead of writing in the text like this costs 2 deck building points, we've actually are just going to be giving the home bases the threat icon. So just like characters, they have that icon. The home bases will have the threat. It'll be 0 to 3 or whatever the range is. And that's gonna like help you just streamline it more with deck building. These things we're learning as we go. We don't have any plans to do random lists of that was never my favorite. I've pushed maybe at some point doing like team affiliations. I've seen that done really well in other games. But nothing is locked in for exactly how we're going to handle that. So look, there's always going to be innovations and new mechanics as long as we're not changing the fundamental experience. So the average player thinks like this isn't overpower anymore. Like it doesn't give me the feel of what the game always was. We really want to maintain that, but we also always want to be innovating and giving you exciting new mechanics. And I think you'll be blown away with how much we've really been able to take the existing game and not really change the feel of playing, but letting characters do new things. And I think most of our play testers would attest to that. So I ordered some PIM cards for the OP Cup Friday match today. Can't wait to get out there and play. We can't wait to see you out there. We talked about who's playable from the power cards. Ooh, guys, I think we might be to the end. So is all the any characters from the first sets? So that's a great question. We believe we're going to do is in that uncommon slot we talked about in the pack, we're going to be including the any power cards, the 5 multi, some other stuff mechanics we haven't talked about, the home bases, and the any character cards in addition to the extra specials. And that's just so when you go out and you do. Sorry, Sean, can you mute yourself for a second? I'm just getting the talking in the back. So we're gonna keep those any heroes in there. So when you're drafting, we're gonna have some of them, but probably like the more powerful ones, like Grim Reaper / Power Leech, that'll appear in the prize pack. So like the Avoid will probably be something you could pull from an uncommon slot. So when you do a draft, you have a chance at getting that and using it in your deck. But my plan right now is to anything that's been released as a promo. Is some way we want to make sure new players have access to it. So they'll probably be included. Most of them will be included in some way in the new one if they're a card you need to play. We'll have new art for our 8s, and it's going to be great, and you're going to love it. There'll be foil versions of a lot of cards. There will be foil inserts at a certain drop rate that will be foil versions of the really rare art, and maybe like the 8s and a selection of other cards. So, yeah, to answer that question. And last question I see on this list, character specials have a yellow / gold card frame. We're going to stick with the black frame we've been using for now. Most of this is just a business standpoint. You know, we just want to make sure because a lot of who did certain things and they literally just didn't keep track of. You know, we tried to find out who created the original icons in the art forum because there could be copyright issues. No one knows. Like literally no one remembers who actually created those icons. So the reason we got new versions of them designed is just because from a legal standpoint, we can't use something if we don't know who owned it and then deal with something down the road if we got sued. And that's sort of the same. The layouts of the cards, like most likely that wouldn't be something we could have an issue with, but we just want to make sure that when you look at a character and you look at the specials, that's kind of the most identifiable part of the game. You can look at it and you'll know the difference between Lazarus Rising game cards and what the original set of cards were. So we're going to stick with the black border for special cards to start with now. And we are going to stick with the text being on the bottom, which brings it in line with how all other CCGs are. So will John Carter have the abilities that he's only had on Mars? I can tell you right now, Captain, because it's a great question. We definitely want to represent his enhanced strength. We want to represent his jumping ability, but we also want to represent, we have a card that represents his being able to be pseudo-immortal by going back and forth to the two different planets. So we have that represented too. I can also let a little hint out. I'm not going to tell you what it does, but Barsoom is going to be one of the home bases that has an ability to use and fight on Barsoom, which for those who don't read the books, Barsoom is the name for Mars. Yeah, and since you like it, I'll just give you the list. Its playable characters will be John Carter, Deja Thores, and Tars Tarkas. So all three of those characters will be playable from the John Carter books. We're glad you're psyched. Yeah, we're very excited too. All right, guys. It is 4 minutes before 11, so I think we made it through and answered everything. So we just got to say from everybody here, thank you so much for your support. You know, this has been such a passion project for us, but it's also, you know, it can be stressful. It can be anxiety. We're putting a lot on the line for this. So, yeah, unfortunately, Meet Lummy, we did have an issue with our recording device, the program we were going to use, so we weren't able to capture it. But I'm willing to stay on for a few minutes if you got any questions you want to ask me real quick. So, but I think we probably covered most anything anybody has been wanting to ask. So thank you so much for your support. You know, we're really, I think it's very fair to say we're all doing this for the fans and we're all doing this to create just a really great gaming community experience for everybody. And Meet Lummy, feel free to throw a question or two out there. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Brett. Yeah. Brett, it looks like he took notes. That'd be awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, Ronald, you did manage. So how much did you manage to get for the recording? So we missed about 30 minutes, but we talked for 2 hours. So you guys will get about the last hour and a half of it. So, and I think that kind of covers most of it. I think there's not too much we talked about at the beginning that's not covered. So. All right, guys. I'm going to let these guys go because I know it's 11 p.m. and these guys all have families. So Keith, Dave, Sean, Ronald, I'm the only childless one. So you guys, I'm going to say goodnight, but I'll hang out for a couple more minutes if anybody has some last questions they want me to answer. So thanks very much for being with us, guys. And we plan on doing this a bunch of times. So.
Well, Joe, if it makes you feel a little better, yeah, you say you're childless, that you know of.
That's true. I do have I have a very cute dog who's in a cone right now. This is a very sad puppy because she keeps licking her foot. It is my baby. It is my baby. That's true. I've been putting a lot of time in. It's very fun. It was very fun. This is just a fun little aside. So Doug Sims, one of our tournament organizers / good friends, was at a convention today for pulp magazines and people who, mostly collectors, but people who are super into pulp. And the Edgar Rice Burroughs people were there because I guess the theme was something with Edgar Rice Burroughs' anniversary. And he didn't know them, but he had his OverPower sweatshirt on that we made for the Boston tournament last year. And they came over and were like, is that OverPower like the card game? And he's like, yeah, I play OverPower. I run the tournaments. So they had like a great talk, and they ended up inviting him to talk about Overpower on one of their panels. So he answered some questions about it from a store/player's perspective. So I thought that was really fun. That was a fun story. So
Very cool.
Anyone else? Any other questions before we jump off? My puppy. I'll introduce you guys to my puppy. Come here, up. She is very sad. She's got to wear the cone right now because she keeps licking her foot. Yeah. All right, you got to go down because you're just bumping everything with your cone. Her name is Daphne, not after Scooby-Doo, after Frasier. Everybody thinks it's after Scooby-Doo. Big Frasier fan.
Daphne Moon.
Daphne, no, Daphne the Destroyer is right. She destroys everything. She is a very, very smart dog. She has now figured out if she comes up to the leg of this table and smashes the cone into it as hard as she can bend it and get her foot up and lick the foot she's not supposed to lick. That took her about 10 days, and now the cone's pretty much useless, so I have to go get a hard plastic one for her. She is a escape artist extraordinaire. So all right, guys, I actually think I'm going to take this dog out then. Have you considered adding new cons other than the other 4 we are used to? That's a great question, Green Bear. We've definitely had conversations. I would say most likely if that was to ever happen, that would be pretty far down the road. It would kind of be in line to what we did now, which is, one of the main pushes for changing to brute force was that we wanted a stat that could represent groups of people a little bit better, where, you had in the original game, the Metropolis SCU, they were really represented more by the fact that they developed energy weapons and star labs. And then you had the Commissioner Gordon, they just had an intellect because they were like, well, they're not super strong. They're regular people. We wanted to be able to represent. We mentioned Sheriff of Nottingham is in our game. He's a 7 brute force. Everything is around the fact that he has an army. Hulk may be able to jump in the middle of it and beat up a bunch of them, but the other 90,000 soldiers are going to go sack a city. And so if we were to change types, it would probably be in that vein. There's properties that may not have as many intelligence characters, but have a lot of magic. Maybe we changed blue to mystic, but I think it would always be kind of in the realm of the same color, the same interactions between those colors. 4 is kind of the sweet spot for designing different cards that can affect a subset of cards. If you get too far away from that, it's going to really make those cards that call out power types way less useful. So I think 4, when they got to that, is really the sweet spot. So no, that's a great question, Keith, and we've gone back and forth. So you'll notice a lot of our promos we did on the linen stock. We've had a lot of talk and decision. We are going to be doing a smooth stock, very in line with the most recent promos that we put out, partially because you can't foil linen the same way. You basically can't foil linen. I know there's a few ways you can, but practically we can't do foil cards in linen. So if we wanted to use the linen that was for the regular, then we'd have to do smooth for the foil inserts, and we didn't want to have an inconsistency on the back of the cards, obviously. One of the reasons we have the back that we have is so when we get other IPs, you can mix the cards, and you're not going to be able to have the effect the old game have. I mean, the old game didn't know they were going to get other IPs, so it made sense to throw Wolverine and Spider-Man on the back, but it painted them in a corner where you can't really play casually without them. You can, but if you get guys like us that have played a lot, we're gonna. We know every card in the card pool, and if you're using a character with, say, a teammate avoid, and then you have a DC card and Blob's one of the characters, I'm gonna go, okay, well, I know you don't have that teammate avoid, so immediately I can just attack away from the guy that has the avoid lockout. So you kind of have to use sleeves if you're serious at all about the playing in the old environment. And we didn't want that. We wanted to create what all CCGs have, which is a uniform back. And cardstock plays a big part of that. Anybody here's a big Magic player, I can tell you that I can't remember which set it was. I think it was Mirage. Magic for a while tried to use a different printer, and we will still get lands mixed up in land stations at big tournaments. And if it's one of the lands from that one set that they did it, the color's off, and you immediately can spot it. every time I see somebody draw and they don't sleeve their deck in a like tournament play and they were doing a draft and they have that, I immediately know that's a land and it's a huge advantage. So uniform backs and uniform yeah, thank you, Tug. It was the more saturated. So these things are huge. They're huge things we have to plan and talk about. We'll be using a smooth stock. It'll be a 2 sheets with a black colored core, and it will have a card varnish as opposed to a UV coat if you want all the details about about what we're doing. So, but that's a great question. So, and guys, you don't have Keith, Dave. You guys don't have to stay. Like, go. It's past 11. Feel free to bounce.
It's 11 a.m. here for me.
Oh, that's true. Okay. All right. I think 11:05. We did 2 hours. I think I see a couple people typing, but I think this is a good place to call it. So, guys, thanks so much. I really hope you keep an eye out for that Kickstarter. Always, we love talking about OverPower. We love any ideas you guys have. We won't always be able to take them, but throw them out there. You know, tell us who you want to see. Tell us what properties you want. Just get excited. It's, you know, it's fun. We've tried to make it the best value at the cheapest price point of any CCG you're going to see. We're really prioritizing and putting an investment on. We're working crazy, ridiculous hours with a small team so we can invest everything into the art you're going to see. We're seeing, you know, and you're just going to get it. We're really trying to push something for you that's going to make a really fun experience. Cards that are great to look at and fun to play with. So, ice cream. So we said that before, but just quickly, we're doing 17 card packs. They'll probably be at about the same price point as a pack of Magic, but it's going to be more playable cards. You know, Magical, they advertise a 15 card pack, but one of those cards is land, and one of those cards is an advertisement card for digital or for sets. We are only having 17 playable cards in every pack, so you're getting 2 more cards than the biggest packs you can get, and they're at the same price point. All right, guys. I'm going to say goodbye there. Thanks so much. Thanks, Captain. Hey, tell your friends. Actually want to support OverPower, go talk to the stores in your area and ask them if they're going to carry it and if they know about the Kickstarter. That's going to be the best thing because stores need to know that their players are going to pick it up. But the more they're on the Kickstarter, they're going to see that we're very brick and mortar store focused. So if you want to help us out, go find 1 or 2 of your stores in the area. Tell them about OverPower. Say we have a player incentive program. We're going to have prize support from day one, and you'll come in and you'll teach people to play. You'll build a community. They'll make money off singles. So that is the absolute best way you can help us prep for the Kickstarter. Wow. Yeah, okay. All right, guys. We're going to call that a night. Good night, everybody. I'm going to hit disconnect quietly.